The smell is what gets you first. It clings to your clothes. A sweet, acrid stench of burning pine, mixed with something I never dare to name, and it never washes out. That was the first lesson I learned at Smithfield, under the reign of Queen Mary. I was just a lad, my legs still trembling when Jem, the head executioner, clapped me on the shoulder, his calloused, oak-like hand nearly sending me sprawling. "Wood's gotta be dry, Arthur," he grumbled, his breath a white puff in the biting London morning. "Always dry. Wet fire just makes smoke. Not purification. Justice. Purification." Those were the words he used. And I, in my youthful naivety, believed them. We weren't murderers. We were the hands of God, weeding his garden of the heretical thorns sprouting across England. That morning, the thorn was an old bishop, his beard and hair white as snow, his eyes unnervingly clear. As they dragged him from the cart, a murmur went through the silent crowd. I had expected curses, resistance, some sign of the devil. There was none. He walked with a terrifying calm, his lips moving in silent prayer. He looked at the pyre I'd spent the morning arranging, and for a second, I thought he nodded in approval of my craftsmanship. My stomach churned. "Don't look 'em in the eye," Jem whispered beside me, his voice as dry as dead leaves. "Look at your work. The rope, the knot, the wood. That's all that exists." He handed me a small, heavy leather pouch. "This is the mercy," he said. "Gunpowder. Tie it round his neck. When the flames reach it, it'll end things quick. The Queen wants justice, not a spectacle of torture." My hands shook as I looped the cord around the bishop's thin neck. His skin was paper cold. I could feel the faint beat of his heart through his tunic, or perhaps it was my own. I tightened the knot, forcing myself to focus only on my fingers. The scent of old wool and faint fear rose up. Then I stepped back, taking my place beside Jem. The torch was lit. In the suffocating silence, there was only the crackle of the flame. The bishop closed his eyes. A single tear traced a path down his cheek, but he made no sound. Jem stepped forward and touched the torch to the driest kindling. The fire didn't roar. At first, it just whispered, licking at the logs hesitantly. Then it caught. A loud crack, and the flames erupted, a brilliant orange and yellow against the gray dawn. A thick column of smoke billowed upwards, carrying the heavy scent of pine resin. The crowd took a collective step back. A unified gasp. I didn't watch the man. I watched the fire, the way it danced, the way it consumed. It was horribly beautiful. Then, there was a dull whump, not as loud as I'd expected. The gunpowder bag had gone off. The man's head slumped onto his chest. It was done. The purification was complete. As the pyre began to die down, leaving a heap of glowing embers and an unrecognizable black shape, the crowd began to disperse in silence. They'd had their show. Jem clapped my shoulder again. "Good work, lad. Now, clean it up." That night, I sat alone, trying to scrub the smell of smoke from my hands, but it was still there, an invisible layer of soot clinging to my soul. I had done God's work, I told myself. I had delivered justice. But when I closed my eyes, all I could see were the clear eyes of an old man. And all I could smell was the sweet, acrid stench of purification. Decades passed. The smell never changed, but the words did. Justice and purification were long forgotten, boiled down to a single, stark word. The job. It was 1,726. Jem and I were old men. His back was stooped, and there was a permanent tremor in the hands that had once so steadily tightened nooses and lit pyres. Today's task was not a heretic with faith burning in his eyes. It was Catherine Hayes, a woman convicted of murdering her husband. There was no martyr's calm here, only the raw panic of a cornered animal. She screamed and fought as they dragged her to the stake. The crowd was different, too. Gone was the solemn silence of the faithful, replaced by jeers and eager, hungry faces. They weren't here for justice. They were here for a bloody show. "This is the last kindness, Arthur," Jem rasped, his voice a low gravel. He held a halter. The plan was to strangle her before the flames grew highest. A quick death. A mercy. I stood back as Jem slipped the rope over Catherine's neck. She was sobbing, begging for the sake of Jesus to be killed first. Jem nodded, and as the torch was put to the kindling, he began to pull. But the fire was too eager that day. Perhaps it was the wind, or the wood was too dry. It didn't lick. It roared, consuming the pyre in an instant. A tongue of flame leaped, faster than he'd judged, and caught Jem's hand on the rope. He cried out in pain and, by pure reflex, let go. The halter went slack. Catherine Hayes's first shriek tore through the air, a sound that was no longer human. It was the sound of pure, physical agony as the fire began to take her. The second shriek followed, shorter, choked, as the smoke and flames filled her lungs. The crowd fell silent. This was not what they had come for. This raw brutality was too much even for their bloodlust. The third shriek was a final, rattling cry of a soul being ripped apart. Then, silence. Through the shimmering heat, I saw Jem, his face a mask of horror and failure. With a wordless, desperate roar, he seized a heavy piece of burning timber, and with all his strength, hurled it into the blaze, aiming for her head. There was a wet, cracking sound, and her brains burst from her skull. I vomited onto the cobblestones, the bile and cheap morning ale rising in my throat. I saw no justice, no God, nothing but meaningless cruelty. I looked at the faces in the crowd, and for the first time, I saw them as something as monstrous as my own work. I turned my back on the pyre, on Jem, on all of it. I walked away and did not look back. The sweet, acrid smell of burning flesh followed me, clinging to me. But this time, I knew it wasn't just on my clothes. This time, I knew the scent would follow me all the way to hell.